The power of silence after a breakup. Most men think silence is what happens when there's nothing left to say. But what if silence is when everything finally begins? In the aftermath of heartbreak, your instinct is to speak, to fix, to reach for words that might explain the loss or undo the decision. But what if the very thing you've been avoiding, quiet, complete stillness, is the only thing that actually gets heard? In this video, we're not just talking about the no contact rule. We're going deeper into why it works, what it really says to her, and most importantly, what it reveals about you. Because sometimes, the most powerful response isn't a plea, or a paragraph, or a final attempt to be understood. Sometimes, it's the man who says nothing, who gets remembered the most. If you're ready to understand the true power of walking away with dignity, not resentment, then stay with me. Like the video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where silence isn't avoidance, it's transformation. Now, let's dive in. 1. When words fail, let silence speak for you. There comes a moment in every breakup when you realize something devastating. Your words don't matter anymore. Not because they aren't honest, not because you didn't mean them, but because by the time you finally start pleading, explaining, or asking her to stay, she's already emotionally gone. You think you're responding to the breakup, but in reality, you're weeks, maybe months, late to a decision she's already rehearsed a dozen times in her head. You're not stepping into a conversation, you're stepping into an ending she already accepted long ago. That's why your most heartfelt messages feel like they're bouncing off a wall. That's why every attempt to show how much it hurts lands with silence. You're trying to open a door that was already closed quietly and permanently. And what makes it harder is this: you believed, deep down, that your love deserved a second chance. You believed your words would move her, that if she could just hear the depth of your pain, she'd change her mind. But the truth is cold and clarifying. Your words have little to no power or leverage in that moment. Not because you're not valuable, but because you're trying to change the mind of someone who has already made peace with walking away. She didn't leave on impulse. She left slowly, subtly, one unresolved disappointment at a time, one unmet need, one quiet moment of disconnection layered on top of another. And all of that happened before the day she finally said it out loud. By the time you try to explain yourself, you're speaking to the echo of someone who's no longer listening. And that's the moment where most men collapse into desperation. They double text, they over-explain, they spiral into paragraphs trying to make her feel something, anything. But what they don't realize is, the more you try to fix the past with words, the more powerless you appear in the present. You're not changing her perspective. You're not rewriting history. You're just repeating lines in a story she's already finished reading. And there's something deeply emasculating about trying to prove your worth to someone who just walked away from it. You think you're fighting for love, but what she sees is a man who doesn't understand that love, real love, doesn't require convincing. You thought this was the start of the breakup, but for her, it was the end of the battle. She already grieved, already wrestled with the guilt, already played out every counter-argument you're now just beginning to form. So when you show up in panic, she shows up in distance, not because she doesn't care, but because her care was slowly burned away by time, not by one moment. That's why silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the only thing left that says, I see what this really is now. When you try to fill every gap with emotion, with apology, with last-minute logic, you don't come off as loving. You come off as unaware. Unaware that you're not just late, you're uninvited to a conversation that's already been resolved internally. And this is where most men lose their grip on dignity. They try harder, they press, they act as though their effort is proof of devotion. But what they fail to understand is this. A man's strength doesn't show in how hard he pleads. It shows in how well he accepts what cannot be changed. Your strength now lives in restraint, not persuasion, because silence in this moment says more than any declaration ever could. It tells her, I won't compete with your decision. It tells her, I see your choice, and I choose to respect myself enough not to chase what no longer wants to be caught. Let her hear that silence. Let her sit with the absence of your reaction. Let her wonder why you didn't collapse, why you didn't unravel. Because she expected noise. She expected you to crumble, and when you don't, something inside her shifts. Not always immediately, not always visibly, but silently, deeply, she notices. She may not say it out loud. She may never say it at all. But a part of her begins to realize you were stronger than she gave you credit for. That's the paradox no one talks about. Sometimes the only way to be heard after a breakup is to say nothing at all, because silence carries the one thing your words never could: self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It doesn't chase love. It doesn't beg for understanding. It doesn't negotiate with someone who already left the table. It simply walks away, quietly, calmly, completely, and in that stillness, you become the man she thought she could leave without consequence, until your silence shows her otherwise. 2. Your absence makes them question everything. When a woman ends a relationship, she often expects a reaction, not just any reaction, an emotional one. She imagines tears, frantic messages, maybe even a plea for one more chance. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just what she's conditioned to expect. That if the love was real, the man will fall apart when she leaves. That if she was truly special, he won't be able to stay away. But when that reaction doesn't come, when you don't chase, when you don't flinch, something unexpected happens. The narrative in her mind begins to crack. Instead of seeing herself as the one who held more value, she starts questioning the very thing she thought was certain: your dependence on her. Because silence, real silence, not the kind that waits for a response, but the kind that genuinely detaches, speaks volumes. It says, I heard you. It says, I'm not here to beg. It says, I know what I bring, and I won't prove it to someone who walked away from it. Suddenly, she doesn't get to feel superior. She doesn't get to walk away thinking she was the prize. Your stillness doesn't give her anything to measure herself against. And in that vacuum, doubt begins to creep in. She starts to wonder, was this a mistake? Not because you tried to change her mind, but because you didn't. You respected her decision so deeply that you let her walk, no resistance. That dignity unsettles her more than any desperate I love you ever could. Because in that absence, you stop being predictable. You stop being the version of yourself she felt in control of. And that unfamiliarity forces her to reconsider everything she thought she knew. Your absence does more than protect your pride. It creates contrast. It allows her to feel the difference between you and the men who lose themselves trying to hold on to what's already gone. You didn't collapse. You didn't fight for scraps. You stood still, and in that stillness, you became larger in her memory. She starts to remember the quiet strength, the way you used to listen, the safety she felt in your presence, the small moments that didn't feel significant at the time. Now they echo, and as she runs through those memories, she starts to see the things she lost through new eyes. Because when you didn't run after her, she started running through memories instead. And the more time passes, the more the silence grows louder. Not out of manipulation, but out of truth. This isn't a strategy. It's self-respect in motion. You walked away not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring more about your peace. That's not weakness. That's power. And nothing makes someone question everything like realizing they misjudged a man who had the strength to let go quietly. And finally, 3. Silence isn't distance, it's power. One of the most common fears men have after a breakup is this: if I stay silent, if I don't reach out, will she forget me? It's a quiet panic that creeps in late at night, whispering that your silence might be misunderstood as indifference, that if you don't fight for her, she'll assume you never cared. But the truth is, silence doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unforgettable. She won't forget you. She'll remember exactly who you became when she walked away. Not the man who begged, not the man who spiraled, but the man who, despite the pain, chose stillness over self-destruction. She'll remember that you didn't try to convince someone who had already made their decision, that you didn't chase what wasn't choosing you. And whether she admits it or not, that memory will carry more weight than anything you could have said. Because when a man steps back, not to manipulate but to reclaim himself, he becomes a presence even in absence. You don't need noise to be noticed. You don't need words to be remembered. Sometimes the most powerful message is the one you never send. Silence isn't about playing games. It's about creating the conditions for healing and reflection, not just for her, but for you. You're not avoiding her. You're not hoping she checks her phone. You're not pretending to be strong while secretly watching her every move. This kind of silence is different. It's not performative. It's purposeful. It's what happens when a man stops looking outward for validation and starts looking inward for direction. Because if you're honest with yourself, the real battle isn't getting her back. It's getting yourself back. It's remembering who you were before the anxiety, before the overthinking, before the need to be chosen pulled you away from your center. This is the moment where you stop trying to prove you're worthy of love and start proving you're worthy of your own respect. You're not becoming someone new to win her over. You're becoming someone whole, whether she ever sees it or not. You're building the version of yourself she would have respected if only you had shown up like this from the beginning. The kind of man who doesn't beg for connection. He commands it. He attracts it by the way he walks, breathes, listens, and lives. So instead of spiraling into what-ifs and hypotheticals, do something different. Sit with yourself. 10 quiet minutes a day. No distractions, no phones, no checking if she watched your stories. Just you, breathing, grounded, present. Write 1 sentence a day. Not about her, about you, about who you are now and who you're becoming. Ask yourself, honestly, would the man I'm becoming chase someone who left? Or would he live in such a way that people regret leaving him? You weren't silent to be mysterious. You were silent to become unshakable. That's the real power of silence. It doesn't just protect you, it forges you. It creates space not only for her to think, but for you to grow, for you to reconnect with the version of yourself that doesn't just survive loss, but evolves because of it. The day you stop fighting for a connection that no longer values you is the day you begin building the most important connection of all, the one with yourself. And from that place, everything changes. You stop needing love to prove something. You stop needing closure to move forward. And slowly, quietly, you become a man who doesn't speak to be heard. He speaks when it matters. And until then, his silence says more than words ever could. Summary. And when the noise fades, and the silence is all that's left, here's what you need to remember. Don't chase closure from someone who chose to leave without offering any. Some endings don't come with explanations. They come with silence. And in that silence, you'll feel the urge to speak, to reach out, to fix what was broken. But if she couldn't hear you when you were at your most vulnerable, she won't hear you now. Let your silence say what your words never could. Not to manipulate, not to prove a point, but to honor your dignity. Because that silence, held with strength, becomes the foundation of something far more important than reconciliation, your evolution. It's not about disappearing, it's about returning to yourself. You don't need to be chosen again to know you were always worthy. You don't need their explanation to find your peace. So stop waiting for the apology. Stop hoping for the moment they finally understand what they walked away from. You were never meant to chase peace. You were meant to embody it. And the moment you stop reaching back towards someone who let go, that's when everything begins. Not with their return, but with your own. If you truly want to rebuild what was lost, let silence lead the way. It speaks, not of surrender, but of strength. Not of desperation, but of deep, enduring value. Trust its power. Let it reshape you. And if this message touched something inside you, like the video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where stillness becomes strength.